Afternoon everybody, it's Scion here. I'm going to go ahead and do a video of our review of the logs. I'm going to try and do something frequently like this if I can see areas where we can improve at. Some of the things that I want you to look at involving your DPS logs when I post them on Facebook is your actual versus exact, which is divided by your activity time, and that gives you your total for your actual output. So the green here is what you did in the amount of time that we participated in. What we need to do is start getting these overall averages up as high as we can. So make sure you're looking at your activity and make sure, for example, that your overall participation in the fight is much higher. Now naturally, if you die, you lose out on time if you're not res, for example. That's going to reflect in your overall output. So we need to make sure that what we're doing is we're getting those numbers up. Second, we need to make sure that we're checking our item level to the item level that's comparable. Now, what I wanted to do for my toon last night with some review over the last couple of days was to figure out how these tanks were, for example, doing this high single target DPS. I figured out how to do it on multi-targets, but I wasn't able to continuously produce anywhere near the numbers that I saw. So some of the things that I wanted to take a look at real quick was first, like I said, the actual versus the exact in your activity time. So this is Gruul. You can take a look at it on the available log when I post it, and then we'll go and we'll take a look at each one of the bosses as far as on the kills. Okay, so here's the heroic kill on Orgorger. As you can see, Zoltamore and Gore actually placed pretty high too on this one. Activity level was 99% for Zolt, and that's really good considering we have the downtime where we have to go in after the crates and things like that. So what I'd like you to do is remember that you're gonna have a designated place. So if I don't give you, for example, a flag to go to, pick a flag in your mind and be like, okay, well, he didn't give me Moon, but I really like going to Moon, and I know that Cortani's gonna be at Moon, so therefore I got a healer in that position. I can immediately engage over there and start clearing out everything. What we have is these huge drops in activity level at points that we need to go ahead and fix so that way we can improve. Basically, for example, like here, in the 60s and the 70s and whatnot, and that's what you're seeing when you're doing damage on the target and it's standing still. What we need to do is improve our damage on targets when we have to move, and also when we have relocation, for example, based on mechanics. Okay. Next fight that I want to take a look at will be Hans and Franz. Hans and Franz now naturally is going to have a low level worth of activity, but because of the movement, for example, but sometimes the movement is really good and other times it's not. So again, make sure you're checking out your activity, and if your activity is low, you need to find ways to improve that overall activity. That's typically through things like key bindings, mouse over macros, knowing your rotation in depth for single target and multi-target. These are all important, so make sure that you're focusing on them. The last fight that we ended up getting down was Flamebender. Flamebender we had some issues on, but that really was just a matter of Star getting his first opportunities to tank on it. We made the adjustments, and by the 5th opportunity we were able to take him down. Activity level on this fight is pretty high, but we also had for a couple of spots where we ended up having it where we need to get more output as far as single target. Our item level at this point for our actual versus what's going on are huge in difference. So we need to make sure that we're trying to maximize our overall damage output. We need to get above 30 as consistently as we can on moving targets and on single targets. Now, like I said, back to me, right? Look at this, terrible, absolutely terrible, 15k. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna bring up Blackrock Foundry rankings, and then I'm gonna show you, for example, what a tank can do and how far below my performance is and why I'm trying to fix it. And then I actually figured it out last night. So I'll go under Protection Paladins item level relative to mine, which is 687. So I'm on the high end of that block right there. And then what you can see is 34k, 30k, 4000, for example, on Blast Furnace. Now these are high-end performances. The individuals with their relative eye level at that point are using mostly DPS, so they're not really using too many safeties, but they are to a degree. But I was like, how are they doing this? How are they creating 59,000, 60,000 damage, for example, on multi-target at points? And that's coming down to doing some analysis of how they're approaching it. So I go and I click on the boss or on the person, and I take a look at, you know, how their cast and their crit and how they're able to focus, for example, what they're doing. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, they casted Shield of Righteousness 42 times, Avenger Shield, Melee, Judgment, Crusader Strike, okay? So I get a really good idea as far as what they're working with. But what I want you to take an analysis of when you go and you look at your own tunes is, where are their spikes? How are they getting these spikes? So you're like, okay, well, there's 1 and there's 2. So there's clearly 2. How are they doing it? You come over to here and you click on buffs. And this is where I ended up figuring out my mistake. What the Paladins are doing to be able to maximize their overall damage on a single target fight, for example, like Gruul, this is Gruul, is that they're activating multiple singles at the same time of abilities. So for example, what they're doing for me is they're drinking their potion, clearly, Time Warp's being activated, okay? Then they're going after Holy Avenger, they're activating their trinket, then as soon as they get a chance to proc Seraphim, they are. So what they're doing is they're going through 5 different ways to be able to sit there and increase their overall ability to do damage. Now, looking at my mitigation I consistently score in the 50 percentile, if not higher. Occasionally I drop down into 30s depending on the fight, for example, because if I'm not getting hit and then I transition into getting hit, there's a couple of things that I have to adjust. But overall, I do well as far as mitigating. I don't do well as far as damage. And so hopefully what I see here is these being all activated in conjunction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 6 things at the same time basically. Puts it into a position where you get this massive amount of output. And so that's what I'm going to start to apply. So for yourselves, for example, if you wanted to figure out, you know, what you're doing and what you need to do, the steps go like so. You'll click on up here, you'll find, for example, your class. We'll pick, will be a fun one to look at. We'll just look at Hunters, Beast Mastery. Everybody knows they blow that up, right? So we got, 57k. Come on over to here, click on them, and then you'll see it's like spike, spike, spike. You know, and you can see usually there'll be 2, and then you'll have some moderate other ones when you're going into your cooldowns, for example, of what you're activating. And then you do the same thing. You click on buffs, damage buffs, and you see what they're doing as far as focus fire, when they're activating their frenzy, bestial wrath. That's their enchant right there. This one has a passive and an active trinket, so you can see when the 2 procced. They go for a lot of synergy. So what you want to try and do is get this to happen here, and then try and recreate it again at other points, using, for example, a combination of your trinkets, a combination of Time Warp, combination of potion use, especially, you know, when we need burst, for example, and make your adjustments as so. I hope this video is helpful. If you have any questions, please post, and thank you again.